Okay, gonna talk about a fairly simple concept, uh, but taking back to the absolute beginning, because the most important part of poker, and people do not think about it, including me. Like I completely forgot about it, or like I wasn't really thinking about it. But basically, poker, you know, the big blind has to put in one big blind, the small blind has to put in half a big blind, and the ultimate purpose of poker is to try to steal those blinds. Um, Whether it's pre-flop, flop, turn, river, you want to win the money in the middle. And so the two ways of winning the money in the middle are to get to showdown and have the best hand, or to get the other players to fold. So pre-flop, simple example, um, you're in the low jack. Let's say you have the opportunity to raise first hand. What are the chances if you raise that you'll be able to win the money in the pot? Well, it's not too great, or it's not super high because, like, I mean, you have five players behind. Where if you raise, say you min raise, well, the chances are fairly high that one of those five players or multiple of them are going to call a raise because they want to win what's in the middle. And so raising super often is just not going to be beneficial. So you're trying to steal the pot. Whereas if you're on the button, well, now you only have to get through two players. So if you raise, then your steal success, your success of stealing the blinds is a lot higher. So you can just raise way more often. Also, there's the principle of position where in the low jack, if you raise and the hijack cutoff or button call you, then you're going to be going out of position to the flop, like assuming that no one else squeezes. Whereas if you raise on the button and you get called, then you'll be in position on the flop. So not only will you steal the pot pre-flop more often, but being in position, that gives you a huge advantage uh, to win the pot in the future. So even if you don't get folds pre, then you win more, or you win a larger share of the pot. So yeah, and then like on the flop, then a lot of it is just simply just thinking about, how just thinking about the benefit of getting to showdown versus betting to induce folds. So like if it's button versus big blind single raise pot, and you're the button, so you raise pre, small blind folded, and the big blind calls. And say the flop is like king 7, rainbow. So the big blind has flopped a lot of air hands that, you can bet one big blind and they're still going to fold 30 some percent of the time or whatever. So they're going to be massively overfolding compared to MDF. So what does that mean? It means that there's going to be more benefit to inducing folds. So betting is much better. And so what ends up happening is you just range bet for a small sizing to get them to fold all of their air hands. Versus, say, on like Jack 10-9. On Jack 10-9 in the same situation, I mean, so many hands are going to be, like, if you are button and you see bet, so many hands are going to be continuing regardless because there are so many, there are straights, there are two pair, there are sets, or, well, there aren't really sets for a big blind, but top pair, middle pair, bottom pair, tons of pair plus draw hands, like pair plus straight draw, depending on if it's a flush draw board, there are flush draws too. Queen X is a gut shot, or Queen X is a open ender, 8X is an open ender, King X is a gutter. So like if you bet like small, the main hands that you're getting folds from are like ace high or just total garbage, and is less garbage than on like King 7. So basically what ends up happening is that in general, like the more connected a board is, unless you're at a big advantage, then the benefit of betting to induce folds is going to decrease, and the benefit of checking back to try to get to showdown increases. Because like if you think about it this way, okay, Jack 10-9. Say you bet half pot, because that's like the most common size probably on Jack 10-9. Button versus big blind, single versus pot. You bet half pot. Well, all pairs are going to be continuing, I'm pretty sure. Or like all Jack X, 10X, and 9X at the very least are going to be continuing. Versus if you check back the flop, then 10X and 9X and Jack X, most of those are going to be checking turn. So you're not only going to, by checking back flop, you're also going to be able to check back turn pretty often, because they're not going to bet into you that often usually. So what that means is that you get to see the turn and the river for free versus betting the flop and then checking back the turn. And even just betting on the flop, you can face a raise. So it's always about trying to win the pot and just weighing your options on if you should try to get people to fold or if you should get to showdown. And like in many scenarios, like button versus big blind, single raise pot. So like button versus big blind, single raise pot. The ranges are wide and you're in position as the button. Well, it's more important that ranges are wide. Meaning ace high is often just gonna want to check down a showdown unless you're betting really often, like whatever, like I said, king 7 rainbow, or other high paired boards, or like something like king 7-2, queen 7-2. These kind of boards are you're gonna see bet really often with your range, regardless of your hand. And so then ace highs are going to bet often. But like on boards where like you bet more polar, so that if you bet like 40, 50, 60% of the time, generally a lot of the middling ace highs are just going to want to check back flop because they're just hoping to get to showdown, or checking back and hitting an ace on the turn or hitting an ace on the river, whatever, and being able to value bet. So yeah, like it seems like a simple concept, but when I was first, or like when I was moving from 50 NL to 500 NL, literally that was the most important concept for me. Is just, is it better to try to get to showdown, or is it better to try to get folds? I mean, there's also the third concept is getting value, but the thing is, most, like 90% of your hands in any given scenario, or in almost every scenario, 90% of your range is not like a pure value hand. So a pure value hand is just the EV of your hand is higher than the pot, meaning if you bet, then you hope that they continue. Most hands are not that. So like, for example, if you're raising in the low jack, raising first in the low jack, then the hands that are pure value hands that you actually want action with are queens plus and ace king suited. I don't think ace king off even wants to get, like, the best scenario or like the best result for ace king off when raising in the low jack is actually just that everybody folds. And it's the same with jacks, 10s, 9s. And even like on the button, it increases a little bit where like I think it's like jacks plus ace king one action. Because you're going to get 3-bet by 10s through 6s a bit more often, and like suited broadways that you get value from, or like whatever, like suited connectors that you get value from. So it's like jacks plus ace king. So basically the point is 90% of your hands or something like that, or like 70, 80, 90% of your hands they prefer to get folds. So you're not really betting for value in most cases. Like in most cases when you're betting, you kind of hope that they fold. Obviously the worst case scenario for most hands is to get raised. Getting called is okay, but many of your hands, your EV, or like the fraction of the pot that you win, it goes up to 100% if they fold, and it decreases if they call, and it decreases by a lot if they raise. So it's always about just weighing the options, getting the showdown versus getting folds. And there are many factors that you can take into account with that, like the ranges, the strength of the ranges, how many two pair plus in both ranges, how many one pair hands in each range, how many zero pair, like unpaired hands in each range, position, if you're in position, then there's a benefit whether you check or bet, but as out of position, you're just going to be checking a lot more, especially if you're at a range disadvantage. So then checking and getting into showdown is going to be the best play, like the vast majority of the time, if you're like the big blind caller or something like that. And stack to pot ratio too. Like the lower the stack to pot ratio, the more likely you are to want to get all in. At higher stack to pot ratios, there's just a lot more checking. And other ways to determine the ranges, like board texture, a person's bet sizing. There are a bunch of things, but the key is just the simple concept of you want to win the pot. You want to win what is inside the pot, ideally. Like if there is, if there are 5 big blinds in the pot, or we'll say for 1.5 big blinds in the pot, that's what it starts with before any action. If you can bet and always win the pot, then you'll just bet every time, of course, because you win the pot. Whether you have a value hand or not, then you're going to bet to win the pot. So the point is that you have to weigh your options, and just, it doesn't have to be super complicated, and solvers help to determine what play you should make and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's getting the showdown versus getting folds. Sometimes it's way more advantageous to just get folds. Whereas other times it's really helpful to just get the showdown, like with your range or with your specific hand. So weighing those options and deciding when do you bluff with ace high. Well, there are definitely specific situations where you always, or where bluffing ace high can be good, or certain situations where bluffing ace high is just a total punt. And it's just about weighing all those options. So yeah, simplistic, but you want to win the pot, get to showdown and get folds. Those are your 2 main goals. And obviously betting for value with your pure value hands. You want to get all in with the nuts, ideally, but then some situations you will end up not getting all in because you want to get called by a weaker range or whatever like that. But yeah, it's those 3 principles. That's what helped me the most, and the thing that I learned the most were back in November of 2021 or of last year. I tried to forget everything I had learned up until that point and to just start scratch. I started studying solvers more intently, and over and over this principle of, thinking about the getting to showdown versus getting folds. It just kept coming up over and over and over. And until I realized, like, this is the central thing of poker, is you want to win the pot. So then just figure out how to best navigate the game tree to win the pot the most with your range, with your hand type, and with your individual hand. So yeah, win the pot. That's what you want to do.